Welcome to the Moviegoers Society podcast brought to you by Nerdtropolis. I'm your host, Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis. And joining me once again is my co-host, Drew Munhausen, the professional media and movie mastermind, who is once again back in space. I feel like we've had another time that you got to go to space. I don't know what film we were talking about, but I feel like another time before.
I feel like that you're right. Like I know I've been in space before. I'm trying to think what it was for also, but I love space movies. Any type of space stuff, I'm usually all in.
Yeah. And so, in this podcast, we do dive into the world of cinema, exploring everything from beloved classics to the latest blockbusters. And we're on episode 49. It's going to be a little different, but we're going to enter the Cage verse with the latest flick featuring Nicolas Cage, Longlegs. We're also going to talk about Fly Me to the Moon, is why Drew decided to take a little vacation after the nasty hurricane we had, guys. We got to say, that's why I feel like have we been off technically?
Yeah, I was gonna say I issue a huge widespread apology to Despicable Me fans everywhere. The hurricane and loss of power for myself personally, it halted Sean and I from doing just a long, in-depth dive, really picking apart, analyzing Despicable Me 4. I'm sorry we couldn't do so. In the world of movies, every week there's new movies coming out, and we got to talk about what's new. And unfortunately, we just couldn't make that one happen, but I think we'll be okay. I don't know if the Nerdtropolis fans have been banging down your door, Sean, wanting, where's your Despicable Me 4 review? Where's the content?
Well, if they want to read a review, we do have that on the Nerdtropolis website. We got everything going on there. I mean, we have Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, Maxine, Horizon. We're going to get into Longlegs, but there's a review up for that. Descendants, The Rise of Red, right now on Disney Plus. There's a review for that. Plus, there's 3 interviews for that. Some great stuff there if you're a fan of the Descendants franchise. Drew does have his Fly Me to the Moon review up online. And I just dropped Twister's review as well. So there's a lot of reviews on there. Also, a lot of interviews. You don't want to forget about that. I do want to mention Hit Monkey Season 2 is on Hulu. I gotta talk to the voice actor who does voice Hit Monkey. That's pretty much doing monkey voices, but authentic monkey voices as well. And he's done so many crazy characters. I mean, from Hulk to characters in Ben 10, Troll Hunters. If you've ever seen Troll Hunters on Netflix, he is Arg, probably my favorite character on Troll Hunters. But he has so many credits to his name of voice acting. It is just truly, truly amazing. And but before we get into our episode 49. I mean, we're so close to 50. Super exciting. We want to make sure you can connect with us online. You can find me on almost every single social media platform at Sean Taj, Nerdtropolis, at Nerdtropolis. And once again, don't forget to visit nerdtropolis.com for your daily dose of movie news, reviews, interviews, and trailers. And Drew, where can they find you when you're not contributing to Nerdtropolis?
Yeah, you can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media platforms, especially over there at Letterboxd, where I'm logging what I've been watching. Although, Sean, this is embarrassing due to the hurricane and me not being able to watch things after the 4th of July, because I didn't watch anything the holiday weekend because I was busy. Then there's a hurricane. I went 8 days without logging a movie on Letterboxd, Sean. Movies are my addiction. Like that's quite the withdrawal. So I'm back in form now. I'm blogging things again on Letterboxd. Don't worry, everyone. I'm okay.
I'm glad you're on your medication for film. Your your prescription for films is what you need for your life, and I absolutely love it.
I just looked up too. If you are looking for more of Drew and Sean in space, we went to space in episode 32 of Moviegoers Society when we reviewed Spaceman, the Adam Sandler Netflix movie. That was the one.
And I swear there's been another one, but because there's everything is sci-fi space like these days.
Yeah,
that's coming out.
Dune 2 is space adjacent. There's some space related things, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a lot. So definitely catch up on previous episodes of the Moviegoers Society. Once again, we're almost at episode 50, so there's a lot to catch up on. Tune into my podcast, Real Insights, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course the Nerdtropolis YouTube channel. I just dropped an interview with David Arquette. That was a really fun interview catching up with him. He's in a brand new film, The Good Half, which has a great cast in it, great story. But we also talk about He has bought the rights to Bozo the Clown, so he is the new Bozo the Clown. If anyone grew up with that, he owns the rights to Bozo the Clown and is bringing it back for all of us that grew up loving Bozo the Clown. So great insights from him. Drew, did you grow up a Bozo the Clown fan?
I did. I was one of those kids that had a little bit of an aversion to clowns, found them to be, a little creepy. Bozo was okay. Yeah, I have some very vague memories of Bozo on TV.
Yeah, very iconic, but also, a lot of films people talk to David Arquette about, obviously Scream, even Eight Legged Freaks, and a lot of other films. But I wanted to talk to him about one film that we got to talk about briefly was Airheads. If you remember that film that he's in, that's a really great film with Brendan Fraser, Adam Sandler, and the third one. I have his face. He's all in the Sandler films. He has a crazy
Is it Steve
look.
Buscemi in that
Yeah,
one?
yeah, thank you. Buscemi, Steve Buscemi, and a lot more people from Chris Farley and so forth. David Arquette, Ernie Hudson's in it. I mean, everyone's in it. Judd Nelson's in it. So really great there. So check that one out. And then I also spoke to the director of The Good Half, who's actually it's Robert Schwartzman, Jason Schwartzman's brother. If you know their mom, Talia Shire, is Adrian Balboa in the Rocky films. And they're related to Nicolas Cage. So this is very fitting now that they're the cousin to
You've come
Nicolas
full
Cage.
circle.
Yes, and so forth. That family, very talented indeed. But before we get into this Nicolas Cage film, Longlegs, Drew was so, had so much to catch up on. Need to watch some movies. He did a double feature with Fly Me to the Moon and Longlegs. So, which one did you watch first? I guess Fly Me Moon. You watched
I
first.
saw Fly Me to the Moon first, yeah, and it
All right.
was all 2 hours and 12 minutes of it, and
Wait,
then
this will be a little
I
different
know.
episode because I'm gonna probably dissect it as you go. 2 hours and 12 minutes. I had no clue. That would have been
way too long.
Wow. Okay. So 2 hours and 12 minutes without
Mhm.
trailers.
Correct. Yeah, this is the newest movie from Apple. So Apple Studios developed this movie, but then Sony's releasing it. So this will eventually live on, Apple TV Plus. That's where it'll be streaming one day. You know how Apple's done with their rollouts with things like Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm sure that this will get a little theatrical run. Then you'll be able to purchase it on Apple TV Plus, and then eventually it'll be streaming there. Yeah, so it's got a big budget, as these Apple movies typically do. It has big movie stars, it has romance, it has comedy, it has space. Sounds like all the materials that on paper would make for a great movie. And unfortunately, I'd say it's just okay. There's a lot of different moving parts in this one that just didn't all work for me. I like Scarlett Johansson a lot. I like Channing Tatum for the most part. I was excited to see them in a non-superhero fun time at the theaters. But people just didn't turn out for this movie either. We can talk about the box office of it all later, but this movie only made just under $10 million for the weekend. Longlegs made over double that. So yeah, shows that the star power alone didn't sell this movie. I don't know if it just really wasn't marketed well. I have talked to people that weren't even aware of this movie and it being in theaters, but the premise of it is that Scarlett Johansson plays a marketing specialist who's brought in to overhaul the image of NASA to the public. It's in the midst of the space race in the 60s, and the Soviet Union is ahead of the US in the space race. So they're really wanting to market NASA as being something cool to the American people that they want to really follow and take part in. And Channing Tatum's character is the director in charge of the Apollo 11 launch. So this is all leading up to that. And so, as you would expect, it's like Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson's characters meet early on in the movie before they're working together. And there's like a little bit of a spark between them, but then they start working together. Of course, that's when they start to bash heads together a little bit. It's not really, they have a lot of conflicting ideals. And then a little over halfway through the movie, this subplot, and it's in the trailers, but this subplot is introduced of filming a fake version of the moon landing, essentially as a failsafe for they want to televise the actual moon landing, but in case something were to go wrong, they would show the fake moon landing. And of course, that leads to additional hijinks and things. The movie's just got a lot of different subplots it's trying to do. It has a really long runtime. I found Scarlett Johansson's character to be a little grating, despite me liking her in general. And they do kind of justify it at the end, but it was too little, too late. I don't know. There's a lot of negatives here, and I think it's just because you had the recipe here for something that could have been a really easy crowd pleaser, and instead it's just okay. Like some of the things worked, some of the things didn't. My review on the website on Nerdtropolis was a 3 out of 5. So I mean, it's fine, but yeah, it's just I feel like there's a version of this movie that could have been a lot better. It's directed by Greg Berlanti. He's the mega producer who I think's most affiliated with the Arrowverse, and
which is an
being
odd choice
behind.
for director for such a not a big film, but like a star-studded film. I mean, he is
Yeah,
very
because he hasn't
talented.
he hasn't directed a movie in 6 years. The last movie that he directed was Love, Simon, which came out in 2018, I think. And yeah, that was the one with what's his name, Nick Robinson and Josh Duhamel and Jennifer Garner. And I actually liked that movie a lot. And that movie got a spinoff TV show on Hulu, I think it was. And before that, he directed Life as We Know It back in 2010. So he doesn't direct movies very often, but I'm at least interested in them. But yeah, this there's good ideas, there's things that should have worked, and it just doesn't come together. I made a lot of space puns in the review. I'm apologize. Like, falls out of orbit, fails to make liftoff, or that kind of stuff. It's all here.
I heard that Woody Harrelson is really good in this film.
He
Is that
is
about?
good in it. I mean, Woody Harrelson's great, and everything. He does pop up on occasion. Ray Romano is also in this as a supporting role,
Oh,
and
I didn't
he's
even know that. If you had just told me that, I probably would have seen this film. I mean,
yeah, and he's good in it too. It's a smaller part. It's a lot of ScarJo and Channing Tatum, which I think that's to be expected. Jim Rash shows up from Community fame. He plays the kind of eccentric director that they bring in to direct the fake moon landing, and he's very over the top and silly, and it's kind of what you would expect from Jim Rash. I feel like it's kind of in line with the character he plays even on Community a little bit, but like more of a diva here. Um, and tonally it's kind of all over the place, like it fits at times, but he's definitely a bit more over the top than other characters. I don't know, it's just little things like that. Just you see what they're doing and they're trying to have fun, and there's only so much fun to be had in the movie, especially when it drags on a little too long.
yeah, this was, somewhat on my radar, but they didn't really market it that strong. It kind of popped out of nowhere. Like it was like in May you first heard about it, and it's a July release. So like 2 months prior is the first time I think I heard about it. They didn't really spend any springtime announcing the movie or anything like that, especially with this type of cast. So we'll see what happens when it lands on Apple TV.
Well, and this is, just Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt, but apparently the movie was supposed to be just direct to Apple TV Plus, and then they had good test screenings and they decided to release it theatrically, and I could see why. Like, I'm not mad I saw it in theaters necessarily, but I also can kind of understand why. I think from a marketing perspective, people didn't show up. If you watch the trailer, it's kind of even hard to tell what the movie's about from that. It's like, is it about the space race? Is it about this fake moon landing? Is it about all these other things that, and I don't even have all the answers, and I've seen the movie.
I think some people will like it. I've heard some positive stuff. A lot of people like it. They like, if you like Scarlett Johansson and you like Channing Tatum, like that's a pretty good watch. And it's something maybe just to wait on Apple TV. I think this would be a good Apple TV watch. Argyle probably would have been better just watching on Apple TV when that came out, because Argyle did not do it for me in theaters for many
This was
reasons.
definitely better than Argyle,
Well, that's
and
a
I
good
think
thing then.
and I think it does have family appeal. Like you could watch this one with your family. It's appropriate. Um, I think the reason why the review comes off as a lot of nitpicks or more negativity is just because, again, you had all the ingredients here for a great product. So it's disappointing that it wasn't as good as I felt like it could have been. So it's easier to criticize it in a loving way. I'm not trying to, beat it down and say it's a bad movie, because it's not. I mean, overall, my review is mostly positive, but it's just this could have been, I think, something really good.
Well, I'm glad the family can watch this film, because the film we're about to talk about is not for families at all, even though there's like almost a family dynamic to it somewhat. Longlegs. This I don't even know how to start with this because first of all, the name is odd. Longlegs, which is a supernatural thriller horror from Oz Perkins, starring what's it, Maika? Mike, how do you say it? Maika?
I think it's just Micah. Yeah, Micah Monroe.
Micah Moreau and Nicolas Cage. And before we dive into it, I just thought it was really interesting. I'm not familiar with Oz Perkins at all. I'm not sure if you are, Drew, but just going back and looking at, he's really an actor turned director and has directed some things, but he's enacted a lot of stuff. But his dad is Norman Bates from Psycho, which is
Anthony Perkins is his father.
which is wild and really cool because his dad is as a legend in his own right, and I believe he's in this. Oz, the son, is in Psycho 2, I believe. I believe he shows up in the sequel. So that's really cool. So like this is kind of his genre that he's been doing. I heard like this is kind of like the types of films he likes to make. I haven't seen it. Have you seen his previous stuff?
I've seen his last movie, Gretel and Hansel, which is like, the horror, like more extreme horror version of the classic kids, I guess what do we call it, fairy tale. In that movie, they're actually very similar. Like do a very good job of invoking this kind of sense of dread throughout, only to have a third act that goes. Gretel and Hansel is probably way weirder in where it goes, which is saying something because Longlegs is pretty weird. But Gretel and Hansel, yeah, it's you can definitely see Oz Perkins kind of touch on both of these, I'd say.
And before we get into Longlegs, he's going to be doing The Monkey that comes out next year, which is it's based on a Stephen King story. It's the toy monkey with the symbols.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize he was the one directing this.
Yeah, so I believe it's a Blumhouse, if I recall, film. But it's kind of based on that iconic old monkey toy that's found in the attic. So he is directing that. So it'd be interesting to see because I feel like that might be a little more mainstream. But Longlegs definitely feels like a very indie style film, very art house, supernatural thriller. I say supernatural thriller, and that might be a spoiler to some extent because I didn't know that it was going to be a supernatural thriller. I thought it was just going to be like a horror suspenseful thriller. But watching this film in almost an empty theater for our press screening, we probably had 4 people in there. This movie does make your skin crawl, and it did have me jumping out of my seat, especially from the get-go. Very dark and eerie film to begin with, especially the aesthetics, which I thought was really cool to see something that seems so vintage and just everything about it seemed old school. I was getting a lot of vibes of the film Seven to some extent with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, just some aspect of it, especially when you have like an FBI agent trying to figure out cases. And just, I guess, the graininess of the film too. Just film like something you'd watch in the 90s. Because I remember Seven's for some reason in my head. I've watched it several times. I even have it on VHS. It's kind of like a grainy film, also, I think, to some extent. Just maybe because of the time period from the 90s or just how the aesthetics was for that film. But this film did have like an effect on me for sure. I like the story a lot. It follows an FBI agent in pursuit of a serial killer, uncovering a series of clues that she must solve to end this terrifying killing spree from Nicolas Cage, who is Longlegs. And the weird thing is, Longlegs apparently has no meaning at all. When you watch the interviews with the director, Oz Perkins, this is kind of a bad thing, I think. He had no reasoning for Longlegs. It was just like 2 random words or random words that he just wanted to put out there and just called it Longlegs and called the killer Longlegs. I really felt like the film should have had more thought into that name. It just seemed like just a random throw your dart at the board at some name and just call it that. So I just felt like this film does get a little lazy at times for many reasons. But it does build up like a really gritty world of all these gruesome deaths. Drew, did you think the kills are pretty nasty, right? Like it's a pretty violent film for being very suspenseful at the same time. And I don't want to spoil anything, but where the story goes. Pretty gruesome, I believe this film is.
Yeah, it's a hard one to talk about without spoilers in a way. And I'm not saying I want to spoil it. I'm not going to. But it's very much a vibe movie. Like you said, like it's creepy. It's there's a sense of dread throughout, but there's also it's not horror in a traditional horror sense. Like I don't know if I really jumped at all unless it was more of a quick cut or something of the sort. So it's just it's interesting. The Nick Cage performance I actually really liked. I don't want to spoil too much of what he's doing here, but I've listened to some interviews with the director as well, where he basically said like it's really more of like a guy who's interested in glam rock and takes a specific interest in Satan and the occult, and like that's kind of like the basis for some of what they're doing there. But yeah, it's just
But I'll say this real quick: we don't really learn much about Longlegs per se. I feel like there could have been a better story told, more backstory, more Nicolas Cage's Longlegs. I feel like there's not enough of him.
all you really know is that there's been a series of murders over the past 30 years involving families where traces or letters are left by this character named Longlegs, and he's obviously involved, but none of the actual murders can be tied back. Like all the murders are essentially solved based on what happened, but there's just notes left by this Longlegs character to each one. I think that's kind of the loosest description you can give of this one.
Uh, I think we have to say spoilers a little bit because it's really hard to talk about this film without really diving to it. Not all the big points, but like I think one is this FBI agent has a special gift and has a good. I don't know how to explain it. I don't really want to give away too much. She has a good sense of what's happening. She can kind of figure things out by just I don't know how to say it.
There's like a bit of clairvoyance there,
yeah.
but it's never really like they kind of touch on it at the beginning that she has these instincts, but then it doesn't really feel like that is
That's part-time
a defining thing of the movie. Like she doesn't. It's not like she has superpowers. It's not like she uses it to solve the crime. Like it's just she just has good instincts.
When she should be using it, she's not using it. It seems like and I feel
Right.
like she comes off a little. Her character comes off a little lazy, and especially in the beginning.
I wouldn't say lazy, but she is just very subdued.
Well, she's
I
subdued
took
for
it
a
as
reason too, and we don't know how much of her carelessness is because of being. See, it goes into spoiler territory. There could be some type of controlling aspect of this, and that's another thing about this film. Is that there's a lot of questions that came up after I watched this film. Is like, man, we're gonna have to go into spoilers, Drew. This is really hard to talk. This is probably one of the hardest films
well.
because it opens up a can of worms about that third act and how everything came together and that supernatural aspect. We guys do a big spoilers right here because I cannot stop talking in this way. And the Annabelle doll, like there's Annabelle dolls in this that have special powers, or just special controlling aspects of it that helps him convey ideas, but that doesn't show any of that, which is really weird. I just came out of this movie asking myself, how does this all work? And none of it made sense to me. And I think is the downfall of this film, is that it took so many things from a lot of mainstream films we've seen in the past few years and threw it all together. From Annabelle to The Nun, like all these, like the imagery too, right? So like all this stuff, it seems like all these Blumhouse types films or Conjuring, whatever they were, whatever universe they're from, kind of get put into here towards the end, where it could have just been what we saw and thought it was going to be since the beginning.
Yeah, it's tough. So every now and then this happens where the horror film community, like horror cinephiles in particular, are a very unified group. They're a very vocal group if you're on film Twitter, and horror movies have a way of doing really well at the box office, especially considering a lot of these movies are pretty low budget. Longlegs is a reported less than $10 million budget. It made over $20 million opening weekend. The box office doubled its budget. It's going to do just fine. Um, like and this is one that was getting a lot of buzz in that community, and I knew of it. I knew the name. I'd seen some of the marketing for it, but I hadn't really seen any trailers. I didn't know what to expect at all, which in this movie in particular, I'm like, usually I feel like that's advantage. This one I don't know if it was a disadvantage or not, but I had no idea what to expect. So you're just watching one thing play out, and I was definitely interested, and again, I keep using that word dread, but like you have a sense of dread. You want to see what happens. You want to see where it's going, and then it all happens, and you're like, huh, that was that was kind of wild, but that was it. Like for me, I think there's some really cool imagery, some creepy imagery, some interesting ideas. I'm not necessarily mad that it didn't go more in depth on some of those ideas or trying to give them more origin. I kind of like leaving things a little bit out there, or just like a drift within the story, that these things that are stumbled upon. But yeah, considering there are people really raving about this movie and it's one of the best horror movies of the year and so on and so forth, I don't know if I personally felt that way. I liked a lot of what it was doing. I think Oz Perkins has a really solid directorial style and has an eye for these creepy images, but I'm not sitting here giving this movie a 5 out of 5. I think I'm more of like a 3.5 out of 5 on it for me personally.
Yeah, and I gave it a 3 out of 5. It started really strong, and like I said, we're going to be talking spoilers. And I already mentioned some things that were spoilerish. Towards that third act and the unveiling of things, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then it was like I said, I'm gonna put a big spoiler thing probably throughout our whole conversation on here so that people know, that Longlegs doesn't really get his hands dirty per se. And
Mhm.
that was kind of disappointing because that would have made him a little bit more, terrifying. I think these dolls that were being made was just a kind of a cop out at the same time. I kind of wish he had a little bit more of his own power to some extent. I don't know what those things were in the dolls. And then uh just seeing that play out. And then the thing about the plot is, I guess it's the 14th day of, is it like the 14th is the number?
Yeah, like the people that are targeted had a birthday on the 14th of the month, and the murders occurred within 6 days before or after the birthday. It's like a very strange
And
pattern
you
that the
would think
movie sets up, and I'm like, okay.
the agent's boss, whose daughter is about to have a birthday, is on the 14th, never put that together that like she could technically be a target at all. Like anyone around you that would have a birthday on the 14th and lives in the area, you would think would be a target. So I thought that was just a little lazy, and I don't know what part aspects that is. And when she's in the cabin in the beginning and how she's so like chill with him, like popping in to drop something off, and then like big glass windows. It's like, where's the privacy? Like, what is going on? I thought it was odd. Like, you don't call it in. Like, what is going on? Is she really a good FBI agent? Is she being controlled? Like, what is all of this aspects of like poor poor FBI agent acting? I don't know. It's just I just thought it was really odd. And her character is a little odd at the same time, and for a reason. And you'll see, when you watch the film, but at the same time, and it didn't make much sense. Her mom is very subdued in her own way and quiet, and like tons of red flags before you even see her on the phone. I'm like, what is
Yeah.
going on? I'm just like, what an eerie voice that is for a mother. There has to be something there. Um, it's just so many, just I don't know, not cop out per se, but just the way it kind of unfolded was just like really, to me, cheap and lazy because the buildup was so strong. And there could have been so much more to it. And all of a sudden, you bring some other players in and just lazy FBI agents, or just FBI agents that get tricked into his long legs' plans and stuff like that. So that's where I was. And that's why I get it a 3. It started strong for me, like 3.5, 4, and then started dipping a lot as the unveilings. But super eerie film, I would say that.
I kind of agree. Like I thought the beginning was very interesting, and I'm like, okay, I'm along for this ride. Started kind of falling off of it. Then the first doll is introduced. I'm like, okay, I'm back in this again because I find them to be very creepy looking. And then by the third act, I was like, this is just kind of wild. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm a little higher on it than you, but I get it. I could see why people would really love this movie. I could also understand why it didn't get a great cinema score. And a lot of people, your normies, I'd say, that go to the movies would see this and say, not my thing, not what I was expecting.
Yeah, it was not. I didn't watch a single trailer. I really didn't read much into it because I try to do that as much as possible. It's hard when you're the one having to report all this stuff and post all this stuff on the website and be the entertainment movie journalist that we have to be. But I didn't know it was this like this. I don't know if the trailers made it seem like it was supernatural. I really thought we are getting like a crazy serial killer, like Seven vibes. they're conducting these things, and she has to um, solve a puzzle, try to figure out who it is, where he is, what's his next target, and stuff like that. I would have loved to see a very stronger type of film that was similar to Seven. I got a lot of Seven vibes from it for many aspects of it, um, especially with the serial killer and stuff like that. Also, you got kind of like the Zodiac film, the Zodiac killer. So there's a lot of aspects of that too. It just did not have to go supernatural. I think that's what really affected it. I wanted to see just true horror craziness and not a puff of smoke that's in a ball that does something that I don't know what that is. I think that was the nail in the coffin. Be like, yeah, that was not what I expected.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't even disagree.
But I mean, it's a polarizing film. People are going to debate this, which actually is pretty good for a film like this. For people to debate, it's going to get more interest. More people are going to watch it. It's a very interesting thriller film for that genre. I mean, it's a compelling watch. I needed more Nicolas Cage, but Nicolas Cage is unrecognizable. If you actually stare, like, he doesn't even look like Nicolas Cage at all.
I actually really liked his look in this movie. That's one of the things I really liked.
I liked it too, but I kind of wish they'd kind of let Nicolas Cage just be himself, physically, face wise. I didn't think they have to hide it so much.
And see, I think that's all by design, part of the character. And like we said, the glam rock kind of origins, plastic surgery, very common in that.
He's got a grandma face. He's got a face of a grandma.
He just has a face of somebody, I don't want to spoil too much, who just looks like he's had a lot of work done. Badly done work.
Yeah. So, there's that film. If you're into that genre, I'm not into the horror is hard for me. Horror, thriller, or horror, and just kind of like the serial killer stuff is sometimes hard for me to watch because they get kind of jumpy for me, and you never know. But if you like this genre, this is for you. And if you want something different, like Drew mentioned, there is Fly Me to the Moon, which is a very family friendly film, apparently, which is good to hear.
Opposite. And then you got Twisters coming out, which will probably be a little bit more mainstream appeal. So yeah, at least you have some options.
Yeah, and you can always check out all our reviews on nerdtropolis.com. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff. We're on the road to 50. We're probably going to save it for Deadpool and Wolverine, 100. I think we just save it for that one. Number 50 will be and that's just by luck at the same time as we're filming this. That's going to be next week's watch. And then we'll also touch on Twisters at the same time. We'll have time to do that because that is like a legacy sequel. But you can see my full review. You can read my full review of Twisters online, along with the rest that Drew has done with Fly Me to the Moon, and then make sure check out my Longlegs review as well. And for all of you tuning in, don't forget to subscribe and share all the Nerdtropolis content we have coming your way. And once again, Drew, where can they find you?
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media platforms. I've done some recent reviews over at Nerdtropolis, over on Letterboxd, Logging Movies. Shout out to all my Horizon peeps that are also disappointed that the Horizon An American Saga Chapter 2 got pulled from theaters. Justice for Kevin Costner, but I'm here for you if you need to vent at me on Twitter.
The movie business is a tough game out there. I would say that, and that's proven by a lot of the films coming out these days. But thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Moviegoers Society. Once again, I'm Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and we'll see you at the movies.